Welcome back to the Fame Files, where we take a look at the lives and legacies of folks who've really made a difference. And today, we're going to be talking about the one and only Gene Hackman, who recently passed away.
At 95?
Yeah.
95 years old.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Even though, he officially retired from acting like over 20 years ago, it still felt like such a huge loss when we heard the news.
Yeah, it really does. It shows you how powerful, iconic performances can be,
Yeah.
They really stick with you. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, those amazing roles he played, the things that made him so unique. But, first we got to talk about, his passing.
Right. So Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found deceased in their Santa Fe home on February 27th.
Wow.
Along with their dog. Authorities are saying that they don't suspect any foul play, but we're still waiting on the medical examiner's report. It could take a few weeks. It's kind of strange, isn't it? Like, even though it seems like it was probably natural causes, there's still like a little mystery there.
Yeah.
And this one detail really got to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a neighbor who was worried about them, so they called for a welfare check.
Oh, wow.
And that's what led to them finding Hackman and his wife.
It's kind of, it says a lot, I guess, that even though he was this big Hollywood star, he and Betsy had this life in Santa Fe where, their neighbors knew them, cared about them.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, what was their life like after Hollywood? Okay, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit. 5 Oscar nominations, 2 wins. For anyone who needs a refresher, what were some of those roles that made Gene Hackman a household name?
Well, where do we even start? The French Connection, obviously. That 70s, that gritty cop movie. His performance as Popeye Doyle, this just relentless, driven detective.
Yeah.
It won him his first Oscar. And it really changed how we saw action heroes,
Totally.
Yeah.
And then, 20 years later, he wins another Oscar for Unforgiven. Clint Eastwood's,
Yeah, the masterpiece.
Masterpiece. Right? He played Little Bill Daggett, this complicated sheriff. Kind of scary, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about range.
And it's not just the awards, right? Think about his roles in Bonnie and Clyde, Hoosiers, Mississippi Burning, The Firm. The list goes on.
So many.
All these different movies, all successful, all critically acclaimed.
Wow.
What's so interesting about him is that he wasn't afraid to play characters who were, flawed, even unlikable sometimes.
Right. He wasn't just trying to be the charming leading man.
No.
He went for characters that were, raw, uncomfortably honest almost.
Yes. And he could just disappear into those roles. You never felt like you were watching Gene Hackman acting. You believed he was that character.
Yeah, totally. But here's the thing I've always found so interesting. He was at the peak of his career. Everyone wanted to work with him. And then he just walks away. Why?
Well, he talked about it in an interview once. He had a stress test in New York.
And the doctor basically told him, if you want to live a long life, you got to, avoid stressing your heart out.
Wow. So even though he never officially said, I'm retiring, it sounds like his health was a big part of it.
Definitely. And I think he was ready for a change, too. He and Betsy had already moved to Santa Fe, and it seems like they were looking for a more peaceful life.
Yeah, and that's where his second act starts the writing. He teams up with this underwater researcher, Daniel Lenihan, and they start writing these adventure novels.
What a swerve.
It is.
It's so cool to see his creativity, finding a new outlet,
It makes you wonder, was there always a part of him that wanted to be a writer, even when he was acting? Or was it more about, finding a new way to tell stories, to express himself without all the Hollywood pressure?
That's a really good question. They were historical adventures, often set on, the high seas.
Oh, interesting. So pretty different from, the grittiness of the French Connection. Oh, yeah, definitely. But, it's funny, even though the genres are different, there are some themes that, run through both his acting and his writing. This idea of resilience, facing danger, and characters who are kind of on the fringes of society, you know?
Well, that's cool. So it wasn't just a random change. There was a connection there. Do we know, how his writing was received, critically?
It wasn't winning awards or anything,
Right.
but it definitely found an audience.
Yeah.
And, for Hackman, I don't think it was about reaching the same level of success as he had in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think it was more about, following a passion, trying something new, creatively.
And maybe, getting back some of that anonymity he seemed to want. He could be a successful author without having to be Gene Hackman, the movie star.
Exactly. It let him connect with people, but on his own terms,
Right.
without, all the baggage of fame.
I'm thinking about all the what ifs now. Like,
Yeah.
what if he hadn't retired? What kind of roles would he be doing now in his 80s and 90s? Would he be like this revered figure in cinema, like a Clint Eastwood?
It's fun to think about, isn't it? But
Yeah.
maybe that's part of what makes him so interesting. He decided to walk away when he was like at the top. He didn't let Hollywood control his story.
Yeah, it really makes you question what a successful career in entertainment actually means, you know?
Totally. And it makes those later years, the quiet ones in Santa Fe, even more intriguing.
Yeah.
What was his daily life like? What did he do besides writing?
Yeah, what did he do? We have that picture of him and Betsy at the seafood restaurant last March. But what else do we know about his life in Santa Fe?
Oh, well, from what we can tell, it seems like he really enjoyed the simple things. He was a big cyclist, liked being outdoors, and people saw him at local art galleries and bookstores.
So it sounds like he found a real community there.
Yeah.
A far cry from, the red carpets and the paparazzi.
Oh, definitely. And it's almost poetic, isn't it? This man who was captivating audiences by playing these larger-than-life characters, he ends up finding peace and happiness in a life that was totally the opposite.
It really does make you think about what's important,
Yeah.
But we shouldn't forget why he went to Santa Fe in the first place, to get away from all the pressure of Hollywood. And it reminds me, we still need to talk more about those iconic roles that made him a legend.
You're right. We've mentioned some of his most famous characters, but I think we should really dive into what made his acting so unique, so captivating.
Yeah, what was it about him that let him just become those characters? Was it method acting? Did he prepare a ton? Was he just naturally talented?
It was probably a mix of all of that.
Yeah.
But one thing that always stands out in his performances is how much attention he paid to the details. He didn't just say the lines. He lived those characters,
Yeah.
He thought about their past, their motivations, even how they moved.
It's like he was like a sculptor or something, carefully shaping every little detail until the character was like revealed.
I love that. And you can see it in how he uses his body, his voice, even when he's not saying anything, like
Yeah.
in the French Connection. He's playing this tough cop, and you can tell just by, how he walks, how he stands, the way he looks at people.
Yes. And in Unforgiven, he's Little Bill, this powerful, scary guy. But there's also like this vulnerability there, a little sadness in his eyes,
Exactly. He understood that. Like
Yeah.
real complexity comes from showing both the good and the bad in a character. And he did that so well.
It makes me think about the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah.
Totally different from those tough guy roles, right? He's playing this weird kind of messed up dad.
Yeah.
He's hilarious.
Oh, he's so funny in that. His comedic timing is perfect.
Yeah.
And it shows how versatile he was. He could be intense, he could be scary, but he can also be really funny and charming.
He really was a chameleon, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He could do any genre, drama, comedy, and it always felt real.
And that makes his choice to retire even more interesting. He had this incredible talent, and he just decided to walk away. What does that say about what he valued? What was he looking for in those quiet years in Santa Fe?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, was it all about his health?
Yeah.
Or was there something more he was looking for,
Well, if you look at his whole life, it seems like he always wanted to be real, to be authentic.
Yeah.
On screen, he liked characters who felt real,
Yeah.
who weren't perfect,
Yeah.
And in his personal life, he wanted a life that was simple, real, away from all the fakeness of Hollywood.
It's like he was living two different lives.
Yeah.
This huge persona on screen,
Yeah.
and then this quiet, almost like hidden life in Santa Fe.
And maybe those two sides weren't actually that different. Maybe that intensity he had on screen, it came from a really deep place, a sensitivity that he protected by being private,
I read somewhere that he was actually pretty shy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine when you see how powerful he was in his roles.
It's wild, right? Maybe acting was his way of letting those emotions out,
Something
expressing himself in a way he couldn't just in everyday life.
that makes me think about his childhood. It wasn't easy.
No.
He was in the Marines. He worked all sorts of jobs before he finally made it in Hollywood.
Those experiences, they must have had a big impact on him.
Oh, yeah.
There's a toughness there, a grit that you can see in a lot of his characters.
Yeah, it's the classic, like, underdog story.
Yeah,
He didn't just become successful. He had to work for it.
he did.
And maybe that's why his retirement, it means so much to people. You know, it wasn't about giving up. It was about making a different choice, a choice that felt right to him, you know.
And it shows that success doesn't have to be one thing. It can be about finding peace, doing what you love, living a life that's true to who you are.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our look at the life of Gene Hackman, I keep coming back to this question: what's the big takeaway? What's the legacy he leaves behind?
I think it's a lot of things.
Yes.
On the one hand, there's how much his work meant, the roles everyone remembers, the awards, just how incredible he was as an actor. That's gonna last.
Yeah.
People are gonna remember him.
Oh, definitely. But there's also that quiet strength, you know,
Yeah.
that choice to walk away from all the fame and live his life the way he wanted.
That's a powerful thing in a world that always tells you success is about being famous and rich. He showed us there's another way. A way that puts being real, being true to yourself, and finding peace first.
And that feels like a really good way to end his story. It wasn't about getting more awards. It was about finding happiness, finding contentment.
Yeah.
He might be gone, but the lessons he taught us, both through his work and how he lived his life, they're really important.
I agree. Gene Hackman was one of a kind.
Yep.
An artist who really, really changed movies and more than
I
that.
couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And to everyone listening, we want to know what you think. What's your favorite Gene Hackman performance? What stands out to you about his life, about his career? This has been the Fame Files. We'll be back next time with another look at the folks who've shaped our world.